alongside the Paris. He passes high above 2919 East Broadway. This is the Jake Feinberg Show, coming to you live on Power Talk. Please go to our website, powertalk.live. Download our free app and stream all of our live local programming, including Solomon on Blast, the Jim Parisi Show, and yours truly, the Jake Feinberg Show. And we can't thank you enough for making us part of your day today. And it is such a humbling honor to bring in a cat who has shown a lot of support for me since the beginnings of my days when I started my show after the covert racism and outward hostility towards an American president, Barack Obama. He has continued to be a steward of truth through the drum kit, driving rhythms into people's ears, opening their consciousness in many different forms, and we look forward to unpacking that today on the brink of a new dark era. Mike Clark, welcome to the Jake Feinberg Show.
Thanks, Jake. How you doing today?
How you doing, boss?
I feel good, man.
I played
a great gig last night, so I'm in a good mood.
Can you just let's just talk about that for a drummer that play when you have a sweet gig and you nail it. Can you just talk about the feeling and how at peace you are after that?
Well, yeah. Last night I played with Mike Cochran on piano. I got to set it up and tell you everybody so you can get Eddie Henderson, the great Eddie Henderson, and Leon Lee Dorsey on bass. And so these guys can really swing, and they can swing really relaxed or completely energized. And so we ran the gamut of emotions from heavy fire and like really fast tempos to really sultry, brooding medium tempos and beautiful lush ballads. Yeah, it was fantastic. So I think the feeling for me is I was able to commune with the other musicians and with the audience, and that's circular. It comes back to you, all the energy, the good energy, good vibes. And also I felt like I came close to self-satisfaction, to being satisfied. You're never satisfied with what you did, and of course you always make mistakes, and this could be done better. But I came real close. I walked away feeling fulfilled.
Right. No, I did.
That's where I can put it. I did make mistakes. It's not like a perfect. That's not what jazz is. It's what's perfect about jazz, I think, is its imperfections.
I love it. Well, I mean, we've been channeling similar things. I mean, as my show has evolved, it's become it's become about rhythm. And I just want you. This is an opportunity for you to talk to the world. If I'm understanding you correctly in some of the riffs on new media that you talk about, I've gone back and talked to another generation, your generation. It's you, it's Fumilaro, it's Carmen Appice, it's John Densmore, it's Steve Gadd, it's Jim Keltner. What do you guys all have in common? It's that you guys came up, really, your mentors and your heroes were jazz drummers like Art Blakey and like Philly Joe Jones and like Kenny Clark, who weren't necessarily using the bass drum as the main timekeeper. And you talk about cats today, tremendous proficient cats that are playing. The point is that you wound up eventually getting into funk music, but because you had the jazz foundations, it still swung. But today now, younger cats today don't go back far enough. Therefore, their rudiments are stuck in funk and the music doesn't swing. That's my interpretation. You go.
Well, I feel when that particular event is occurring that you just described, it's pretty much exactly as you described it. I don't have too much to add or subtract. You nailed it. I don't think it's like no group of people is monolithic. There are young guys that really can swing.
Yes.
And I don't think swinging is an age thing, but it is an understanding. Fusion and funk language doesn't really, the 16th note language doesn't really fit into most of the swinging feelings, jazz music. It's a different language. And you can have a lot of technique, or you can have kind of okay technique. It's not about how fast, how many many polyrhythms I can play, how many 5s and 7s, 9s, or whatever. That kind of stuff always sounds stilted and strange when you hear it in jazz music. Now, having said that, the rules are there to be broken, and I've heard guys do exactly what I just said you can't do and shouldn't do and have it sound great. So it depends on the guy and what he's hearing. But yeah, I think if you're going to play what they call jazz music, I don't know what to call it anymore.
Right.
Because after all we found out about everything, it's kind of a strange name. But we're just used to saying it. I think that if you can steep yourself, or at least immerse yourself fairly well into the history of jazz on your instrument, like for drummers, it would be under your hands and feet, and to have that history alive and well. Informs your modern playing, whatever it is, that to me,
yeah.
I love that. That's my taste. It's not for everybody. I don't say it's the only way, but I sure like it.
Oh, I know. There are many ways. We are not an authoritarian people. People that
right.
that enjoy melodic improvisation, but it's okay. So try to take your musician hat off for a second. And pretend that you are in the audience as a listener, as I am, right? And I've talked to, it's not just you. I mean, Dave Grusin, I don't want to put words in people's mouths, but I mean, it's like these cats, they're like, I go to these concerts, these quote unquote, we'll use the word again, jazz concerts. And, the playing is great. It's technically perfect, which we just said is not really jazz. But yet they wind up staring at the wall. I mean, they start tuning out the music. So if you have any advice for younger cats who are just, they've disconnected their cable, they're not interested in the deluge of information on YouTube, what is the advice you would have to these younger cats in order to create a swinging feel and a feeling in the music, like you said, that makes you feel different emotions? That to me is the most. You listen to Billy Hart on Sleeping Giant. You listen to the stuff you were doing with Herbie. You listen to the stuff. I mean, that stuff, you can feel it, right? You can feel that. Now, what would be advice for younger cats to make the music have a feel to it and not just make it this sort of technically proficient but formulaic event?
Really to understand the blues, where it came from, who the people were that brought it to us, try to understand what they went through, even though maybe you're not going through that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, definitely not. You would not be going through that at this time period. I don't think, but the blues is the roux of the gumbo. It's the underlay of all of the musics in America, in my estimation. I mean, I'm sure somebody can prove me wrong somewhere on that, but for me it is. And that's where the blue notes are, your heart. That's the emotion. So I think if I hear a lot of people, I don't want to play the blues, it's overrated, or it's not as, I'd rather play all this mathematical kind of music or this or that. Well, I do what you want. This is Earth. Do what you want, But,
this is Earth, baby. Yeah, I do.
Like at this point, hey, go for it, whatever it is. And but if you want the music to swing, I think you should really know about the blues, and then you should also really understand what Charlie Parker did, his innovation, and how it changed things. Understand all of the rhythm sections from the big band days until right now. I mean, that doesn't mean you have to study it like homework and be burdened with. There's plenty of tunes that I don't even remember the name of until the guy starts it, and immediately it comes to me. Oh, yeah, I've been playing this since I was in 6th grade. Or I don't know every record with every track and every artist on it. I'm not that cat. Mm-hmm. But what I do know is I took an overview of the whole thing, just living a fairly long life and listening to everything I could get my hands on. But I didn't memorize everything and memorize the liner notes and memorize which drummer was on this record. I mean, I pretty much know, but I certainly know what happened. and I made it a point to know that. So I didn't do it like quantum physics or some high math. I just did it natural. Like, I liked the music. Fortunately, I like jazz. I love the blues, and so I just listened to it from the backdrop for my life, and it sunk in.
Can you talk more, even unpack that further? Because Mike Clark doesn't read liner notes. Mike Clark creates music that winds up on liner notes. What is your definition of learning for younger cats? Is it a matter of playing shuffles, going back to Fats Domino, and just playing that stuff? You can only learn so much from. Throw the textbooks out. I mean, some of this stuff is too simple because we're creating these technical giants coming out of these schools that Eddie Henderson's teaching at, and yet they have no places to really learn, meaning play on the bandstand. What do you mean by learning?
Well, I think for me, every situation, every chance that one gets to play with other live human beings, that's for me how you learn. And you learn from listening as well. Well, you learn from everything, meaning listening to music, learning to read music, listening to the artists you like, listening to the artists you don't like, try to develop a wide taste. But for me, the important lesson came on the bandstand. That's where I was able to put it together. But the practice room is important too, but at the end of the day, when you're playing with people, that's to me the most important. That's when I learned what to do, what not to do. I got advice from older musicians. I got dirty looks. I got big smiles. I got thank you, that was great. I got don't ever do that again. Oh, damn it. So that I was able to and then I was fortunate. My father was a jazz drummer, and he wasn't a very good drummer, but he had a huge record collection. So before I even could walk, they were playing that all day or much of the time in the house, and I was sitting there. They used to put me in front of those big old record players they had in those days, like those big wood pieces of furniture, and they just play Count Basie, Duke Ellington, whatever. So I guess somehow, and Gene Krupa, Benny Goodman, I guess it was the osmosis thing for me. My brain assimilated all that stuff before I could talk. So I didn't, it wasn't a problem for me to play the drums. It just seemed to be natural for me to play the drums, like right away. And also I was fortunate that the first time I ever went near a drum set, my father heard me play or attempt to play, and it made sense, and he took me to a gig that night that his friends were playing and had me play with a live band. So my live band thing started like right away, and that's where I honed it down, was on the stage. I'm still working on it. I'm still trying to get it to sound better, You're nailing this.
I just, I'm just, to me, do you feel, what is the solution in your mind? I mean, you and Paul Jackson lived in Oakland together. There was a lot of organic, sort of tapestries. You were playing Black Panther movements. What is your advice to cats who don't, because, I mean, listen, where you live in New York, I mean, you have to diversify. You're all over the place, man. I mean, you're traveling to gigs, you're playing here, you're doing clinics, drum practice, Wolf Clark expedition, everything. So, but you're also, you have quite a resume and a dossier to lean on. And for younger cats, can you talk about a time in your life when there were no places to play and you just had to make it up, like spontaneous creation, doing it for free? How do you work outside the confines of where we sit today in music?
Well, great question. Actually, interestingly enough, I never had a problem working until all of a sudden, like from high school until I was about 52 years old.
Yeah.
I didn't network. I went out to hear the music. I didn't go out to network, but I'd meet all the guys. But until I was about 52 years old and the clubs started shutting down in Manhattan. I learned to be businessman. Before that, I took care of business. I showed up on time. I paid the band or got paid and learned the music and that kind of business. But then I had to teach myself to be my own agent, my own manager, book gigs, call club owners, and not feel intimidated or not feel like I was, running up underneath them just to get a gig. I mean, it was a different kind of honing down skill. And I'm still working on that too, so that I'm not approaching a person hungry. I'm approaching a guy and keeping my dignity while asking him for a gig that pays really well and to present a band that I believe in. And I had to develop business chops, and it had to be done. Before it was just play the drums, learn the music, listen to music, improve, practice, go to the gig. Don't do anything too weird at the gig so people will call you back, and try to play the music appropriately. Now, and even now today, like all these things you say I'm doing, I'm orchestrating, putting these things together. That's how I'm able to do them. My phone is definitely ringing, but not at the level it used to. It just used to ring literally all the time with work, and that was not unusual for drummers that were, or any musicians that were at a certain level, But now it's I feel like I'm a businessman. I'm my own promoter. I learned to do promotion. All of the I learned to do radio. I learned to do whatever I got to do. I do to keep the party going, because it's we used to work 7 nights a week and complain about it for 40 years.
Unbelievable. You guys were so spoiled.
Yes,
so spoiled. Unbelievable that you would complain about the... I mean...
Yeah, we get tired. So you get so tired. And maybe you don't like the funk thing with Paul and I. Paul played upright bass. For years we had jazz bands. So it wasn't like we were playing funk gigs. We were playing jazz gigs.
Right.
And then finally, with Horace Silver, we started doing a little kind of lightweight boogaloo, and not that he's lightweight, but it wasn't like James Brown type. We started Cannonball, started playing some funky stuff. So did we in the clubs.
Right.
And then it just and then in order to make a living, it changed. There was one point where it was hard to play acoustic jazz all the time. I had to mix it with the funk thing. So that's why the funk thing came about with Herbie Hancock. It was a gig. I was trying to pay the rent. I've worked all my life, so I got a work ethic. So it was like, okay, if I have to play funk, it's not my favorite thing. I don't hate it, but intellectually and every other way, I'd rather play bebop or post-bop. It's just how I am. It's the stuff I listen to all day long. You know what I mean?
I need to talk to you about, this is something I've been talking to all the kids. By the way, I'm not sure if you listen. I'll send you the clip, but I saw this picture of you and Carmine Appice at the NAMM show, and I'm like, I bet those guys go way back. And when I had Carmine on, I was like, hey, when was the first question I asked him? I said, when did you first meet Mike Clark? And he's like, whoa. He's like, just a couple years ago.
yeah, but we hit it right off. But you're absolutely right.
Yeah.
We met at a drumming camp, COSA, I believe it was.
Yeah.
And right away, my mother's Italian, and I was raised Italian. I mean, I'm not walking around, hey, I'm Italian, but I could relate to this dude within the first 1 second.
Right.
And he wanted to have some spaghetti and have some wine, and I'm like, oh yeah, let's do this right. And he was and then he turned out to be a knowledgeable guy and a great guy and a smart guy.
Exactly.
A good cat.
Really great. Well, no, because he grew up playing jazz in the Goodfellas in that club that burned down in the movie Goodfellas.
Yeah.
I mean, to me, it's like, how much? I just want you to. We've done a couple interviews before, but I want you to. I've been talking to Mike Mainieri about it as it relates to Buddy Rich. I've been talking to Steve Gadd, Keltner. I want you, Mike. I think part of the issue. Joe Sample, rest in peace, said you could have drummers in their 50s and they don't understand the colors that the cymbals create. Reggie Workman says he can go to see a jazz gig now. They're technically proficient, they don't touch the cymbals because the cymbals now have become like this bashing instrument. They smash cymbal smashing. So can you talk about the cats that how you learn to use the cymbals to keep time or just to add colors to it? Because to me, that's where the emotive stuff comes out too. I mean, I don't, it's hard for me to listen to, I just don't like to listen to formulaic drummers. And we've talked about the schematic getting lost before, but that bebop period, those cats were using the bass drum for rebound. They weren't necessarily using it to keep time.
Right. Well, good point. Yeah, well, they did feather it. Most of the good guys did.
Yeah.
But you know all this. We're talking to the listener, not just to each other. So
I want you to talk about in a bebop. You were rooted in bebop, and I want you to just talk about some drummers that just some sort of transcendent experience where you realize that you can sing. Like there's just the colors are really the emotive parts. Jazz is the feeling music. That's what you just talked about with Eddie Henderson and those cats. I mean, it's just about.
Yeah, well, the ride cymbal is the lifeblood of swing.
Yeah.
Of course, along with the bass, but I'm a drummer, so I'm looking at it from that perspective. And many people think you just play ding ding a ding on the ride cymbal, play the ride pattern, and then stack up all your chops against it. That's not playing jazz. And there's a lot of guys that do that, and they do it really good. But I find it boring. To learn to play the ride cymbal. Shelly Manne, I think I said this to you before, maybe not. Shelly Manne once said, playing the ride cymbal, the jazz pattern, is the easiest yet the hardest thing you're going to ever do in your life, playing jazz music. So I feel a lot of guys maybe now don't know how to play the ride cymbal. They don't put a lot of thought into it. To me, that's your signature. That's your time feel. That's your feeling for everything. So I experimented with. I tried to sound like every guy on record that you ever have heard of. I tried to play my cymbal like every single one of my. I don't think I ended up with my cymbal beat, and but it's really important to really understand how important. It's important to understand how important the ride cymbal is, and how to play it correctly.
Let's just go deeper. I want to go deeper in that. Why are younger cats? They assume it's just. When Shelly said it's the hardest thing to play, what did he? I mean, without getting too deep in the weeds, technically, what did he mean by that?
Well, first of all, you have to have your own rhythm. It's a rhythm. It's not a mental thing. It's not just a color. It's a rhythm. It's a beat, just like you hear Clyde Stubblefield play a James Brown beat. So your time has to be solid. You want to have a blues feel on there for most of the for a lot of the jazz playing that you'll do. Maybe not everything. Meaning, Sam Woodyard used to do it like scooping ice cream, to dig that quarter note out and get that funk on there, and that stank. And I think I tried to find make my ride beat sound classy yet down, back in the alley and down, but yet it has an attitude. That's not easy. It's easier to play, for me, to play a bunch of fast paradiddles than it is to get that. See, you have to be able to lock up with the bass player. If the guy plays behind, on top, or with you, I mean, you can feel it right away whether you're going to unite with this guy. And so then you got to either take what we call the point. I like to put a point on the ride cymbal, meaning some pretty serious definition, not tense or tight, still relaxed but solid. Some guys play kind of a wavy beat that's not doesn't have a lot of iron in it. It's not a real rhythm. It's just they play the notes, and they might be able to solo real fast or real good, but maybe their 4/4 isn't quite that strong. So if their beat's not strong, sometimes you have to take the point off the ride cymbal and widen your beat to try to mask the fact that this guy and you are not exactly coordinated. And then through doing that, there's a way to find the guy and for him to find you, so you're not like domineering and making it like a a Nazi thing where it's like, here it is, and I'm not moving it. But sometimes you have to, like, what did somebody say to me the other night? You have to plant your flag in the sand, you know what I mean? And just go like, okay, well, it looks like we're not going to connect, so I'm keeping it pretty much right in this area, you know. And all of that is a juggling act, man. And meanwhile, you're keeping up with the changes of the song, the feeling, the colors, what the soloist is doing. You're comping. And so you're going to try to make everybody comfortable, but like sometimes a band feels good to lean on your time on the ride cymbal for you to stay real strong, and then other times they like you to be more elastic and let go of the control and make it loose. And if you have a bass player that understands that, and everything just seems to sort of gel for some reason, you know what I mean?
Oh, like, absolutely. No, you are creating incredible content. Mike Clark riffing verbally on the Jake Feinberg Show live on Power Talk. This is another question for you to take your brain in a different direction. You look back to the drumless quartets. I'm thinking like Oscar Peterson, Ray Brown, and maybe Joe Pass. You had these different amalgamations, drummerless, because those cats had rhythm. And like you said, people rely on you now sometimes to keep the rhythm. Do you think younger cats, a lot of people think they have good rhythm, but I'm not sure if do you think that younger cats still understand the value of having really good rhythm? Because remember John Abercrombie said, he got worked out by Johnny Hammond Smith, and those were lessons on the bandstand. You didn't have a lot of time to prepare. Everybody in the band had rhythm. So, to me, do you find that younger cats have the ability to keep good? They have good time.
No, well, I think it's not younger cats. I think people without a good beat come in all generations. Yes. My age, older, younger, the whole nine. Now if you're talking about swing orientated music, I think like older guys maybe have a little better shot at it. But even those guys. Some people just don't have a strong feeling for rhythm. And like I played with Ray Brown, and he didn't need a drummer. He was like a drummer. So when you played with him, there was zero problem. Christian McBride the same way. He's got a tremendous beat, man. So when you're playing with Christian, there's no separation between the ride cymbal and him. None. I don't care where you put it. You know what I mean? He's just funky. I mean in a jazz way. We're not talking about
absolutely.
Yeah,
I dig.
Oh man, Buster Williams is like that. He's got all this harmonic range that's totally sophisticated, and yet he's got a kick butt quarter note. Great quarter note right in the pocket. You don't have to look for the guy. You know what I mean? And like some guys play really good, and they play great solos. They know the music. They live the music. They got leather coats. They smell like weed. You know what I mean? But they ain't got no beat. Oh, and it's like it's got that washy beat. Like the strings maybe aren't. A lot of guys that play with no amps around New York have strong hands, and they can just pull the strings, man. You know what I mean? And when they do, you get a good solid quarter note out of it, And when you play with a guy that really knows how to swing, you don't have to worry about where all of a sudden there's no top or bottom of the beat. All that becomes ways to explain why it's not happening. Now, this is my opinion. Another guy might say completely backwards from me, and for his life it could be correct, But for me, this is, and for the experience I've had, this is how it lays for me. I can tell in 2 minutes whether a guy's got a good beat or not. And if a guy has kind of a wishy-washy, like Bill Summers said it all one time at a clinic him and I did. He said, well, if there was no time, then music would just be one long note. You know what I mean? If there was no rhythm, it would just be one long note. So a lot of guys have that kind of watery time, and you know what? And some guys do that, and they do it great, and they understand how to do that, and that's what they do. I'm not that guy.
So let's just break it down here. Wolf Clark Expedition, can you say that you are attempting to add to the vocabulary of melodic improvisation? What is unique about this particular amalgamation?
Well, Eddie Henderson has joined us.
Wow.
And he's brilliant and innovative as well as really good, as great, as well as being great. He's innovative. So those are two different things, innovative and great. And Wolf is innovative and great. And so when we play together, there's an interesting conversation that can break all of the rules that I just got done laying down at any time, but not without it. It has to have substance. It has to make sense. You know what I mean? And so, music to me at this point now, where it's not an open communication, if it's not really blues ridden, it can be boring for me. For somebody else, I can't speak for anybody else. But so this is like loose, open, yet it swings hard. Mike reharmonizes even his reharm tunes. You know what I mean?
Right. I mean, let's be clear. I mean, Eddie Henderson is a total innovator. Mike Clark, an rhythmatist innovator. Mike Wolf came from Indianola, Mississippi. So the blues are ingrained in the music. But you said something very important there. How do you just went through all this, you just riffed on all these rules, and then you sort of contradicted yourself by breaking all the rules. How did you get to that point as a musician to be able to pull it off and have substance? Because that's the key. You can't just float away. Otherwise, it's going to sound like it's going to be a mess.
Yeah, I did. I'm glad you're sharp, Jake, about all this, because I as soon as I said that, it laid funny for me too.
Yeah.
Well, what I think I meant was because it happened last night on the gig.
Sure.
All of the things that I consider important that we spoke about are alive and present in the music for almost always in the Wolf and Clark. But by breaking the rules, I think I meant we can take some really wild chances and visit some areas that are really like walking the tightrope. Like, man, I hope this guy doesn't fall off the tightrope. You know what I mean? It's 90 feet down, and there's crocodiles and a ring of, all of a sudden we're into some strange, uncharted area that none of us know about. There's nothing yet. The other things that I was talking about are still alive. We haven't sacrificed any of that. It's all still right in place. So we're working within the parameters of swinging, the chord changes, the form, playing together, making sure that the conversation has continuity, like we're talking to each other. It's a shared conversation, and then all of a sudden some guy doesn't just take off and go on his own. We're hooked up. Not just in the time, but hooked up in the conversation. So business such as the taking care of the groove, this and that, all of that is on automatic pilot, so we can have this conversation. I don't have to mind the store, neither does Mike. Eddie Henderson is free to just whatever he feels like, and we're listening to him so carefully that we're diagramming what he's doing, and sometimes it can get to a real fierce, intense boiling point, and other times it can be really mellow and relaxed. But we're keeping all of the things in place. So it's not, when I said that we break all the rules, it's not just like we throw everything out the window and go nuts. No, that's so I didn't really word that.
No. What you're saying is, I mean, over decades of fine-tuning your rudiments and putting yourself in different settings outside your comfort zone, you get to a point where you can take the conversation to another level and add vocabulary to it. And that, to me, is brilliant. I mean, people say, you need to have your technique. But I want to read you a quote. This was someone mentioned it in a comment on my interview, and I had forgotten that he told me this story. I want to read you this story, and then because I think one of the things that we can really try to do to the listening base and the people all over the world is that there's Mike Clark drum books, Garibaldi drum books, Pat Martino guitar books out. There were no jazz schools when Mike Clark was coming up. This is a quote from one of my interviews with Joe Sample. He said, I went over to Wes Montgomery's house in Indianapolis one afternoon. He wanted to play a song for me that he wrote. I think it was called Outback. I sat there with him and he began playing things. His use of harmonies was very unusual. I would say, "What is the name of that chord you're now playing?" He said to me, "I don't know." Then I said to him, "What note is your second finger playing on?" He said, "I don't know." I said, "You mean to tell me that you don't know the names of the notes that you're playing?" He said, "No." I said, "This is amazing. The man who is playing this instrument has no idea what the names of the notes are. What an unbelievable gift. Playing all this unbelievable technical music and he had no name for any of the notes." Can you talk about just stripping away all the material and the content and basically just being yourself and not necessarily having to attach any kind of credibility to it other than your own soul?
Well, yeah, I think I can. First of all, in Wes Montgomery's generation and Joe Sample, and in mine, I knew many artists like that.
Who did you know? Who did you know like that?
Many people that I played with just played. Paul Jackson was one. He's not just a funk guy. He played organ.
Yep.
He played piano, and he didn't know what he was doing, and it was always right. I'm not saying in a school they might find it wasn't correct, but
it always felt right.
Another guy from the West Coast, it was Vince Guaraldi. He like could play some really heavy harmony, and I'd be like, "What was that?" Or he was just playing. You know what I mean? I mean, it wasn't like he knew nothing, but he was just playing. I played with Jon Hendricks one time, and he was singing all this stuff, and I'm like, was that something you got from Dizzy or Sarah Vaughan, or he said, like, I don't know what it was. I don't know what it was. I spoke with many great drummers, but he said, I don't know what all this is. I mean, I know how to do it, but I don't know what it is.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I did.
At that time, it seemed like there were a lot of people in the. This sounds. When I hear this story you just told me about Wes now, the only reason it sounds unique to me at my age is because you don't hear that story much anymore. But I remember when that was usually the story.
I love that. That was usually. See, here's the thing. That is so invigorating because that was the par for the course, was that it was okay not to know. And now younger cats, my generation, you have to know. Otherwise, you somehow are a fool. Here is Wes Montgomery, a genius, able to say, "Joe, I want to play you this tune." And Joe's peppering him with questions, and he doesn't know, and he's okay with that. That is incredible.
Yeah, I think it. I do. Think at this point in time and space, it's important to know because they've made it important to know. But no, we didn't even discuss this hardly in those days because most of the people were just like what you say. They heard what they liked. They bought an instrument when they were young. They've been naturally talented, and they hear the records, and they just play what they hear. And it becomes, and then they incorporate all the different stuff they've listened to. That becomes their style. Listen, I'm not going to mention any names, but I know like some really heavy jazz musicians that are leading the pack, and have been for years. That don't read a note of music. They're blind when it comes to reading.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
And not just drummers. And it's like. I know that's passé, and people don't do that anymore, and it's hard to get a gig if you can't read. But there's all it's a different time, so I understand that too.
No, you know what it is though. Here's the key word out of the whole story. His use of harmonies was very unusual because he was just making. That's what I'm saying. I'm just always, to me, out of this whole thing, Mike. What I wanted you to talk about with any of your projects is. That's how new vocabulary of music will be created. That's how we always talk about the schematic got lost. But that to me is how it's like it's okay to rely on your natural abilities. As far as getting a gig now in today's world, harder to do. But to me, that his harmonies were unusual because he didn't know what he was playing.
Well, also I've heard something. I know it's not I don't know that the extreme, because 1 minute it seemed like he did know everything he was doing, and another minute it seemed like he didn't. But I've heard the very same thing said about Charlie Parker. Right. He was like, I don't know. I don't know. But then I've heard other people say he could write it all out. So, I don't know. But I've heard many people who knew him say he was just playing. You know what I mean?
And I think that's one reason before the Jake Feinberg show came along, people would say you can't describe music, you can't talk about it, because in that case, most people were saying they don't know how they did it. They knew it, but they don't know. Here's I wanted to ask you a question as it relates to, you had Joe Cocker and the Mad Dogs and Englishmen. You had James Brown, who actually never had two drummers simultaneously. You had the Allman Brothers. Did Mike Clark ever play in and even Don Ellis? I mean, I was interviewing this drummer, Rich Quintanal, and he's talking about Ralph Humphreys himself, and Don Ellis had 3 drummers on the stage at one point. Did you play in a multiple trap set format in any part of your career?
Well, I did. I saw Don Ellis I know Quintanil, I know those guys. I saw Don Ellis with the 2 drummers and the 3. And James Brown, at one show I was at anyway, did have 2 drummers playing at one time, and there were 3 drummers on the stage.
Interesting.
Yeah,
okay.
And I think this might have been when Melvin Parker was playing. But no, he definitely 2 guys were playing at the same time. There was another... there were several. Lenny White and I have had a band that we put together on and off over the years with 2 drummers. We've done it quite a few times. The Headhunters one time, we did a week at a club, and we used Lenny White on drums along with myself. And
that's awesome.
I don't think and we've recorded Cat Let Out of the Bag with 2 drummers on Lenny's record, and on my record, on our label, OWL, Carnival of Soul, we wrote a piece Lenny and I did for Sit Cat Let Out of the Bag, and there were 2 drummers on there. But first of all, I love playing with Lenny because, he's so easy to play with. And I can't think of that I played with a couple of drummers before, 2 and 3 and 4 drummers at one time, just playing rhythm and going off and playing a lot of stuff. But I don't think that I've ever played in a band other than the one with Lenny with 2 drummers going on at once.
Well, I was going to ask you about because I wanted to. Did you, setting Lenny aside, because obviously you guys are like hand in glove, because Keltner was talking. Keltner hated double drums. Not because Jim Gordon, but just because he always felt that one drummer had to be inhibited a little bit. They couldn't truly play as a drummer. They had to play more as a punctuator or a percussionist, and they can never really get their true soul out there. That being said, Quintanal said that at the end of these, first of all, when they had 3 trap sets, everybody got a solo, and then the harder stuff Ralph Humphreys would take care of. But eventually, at the end of these sets or songs, the crowd was so invigorated, they'd get up and applaud. I mean, it was like this visceral reaction to this rhythmic. I mean, I just feel like, to me, the more rhythm that you have, the more the more that it can congeal together, the more your consciousness is going to open up. Obviously, it has to be with the right cats. But
I didn't have that experience that Keltner reported. Of course, now the music I played was more, for lack of a better word, let's say along the Bitches Brew line.
Right.
I mean, we weren't copying or recreating. I just don't know any other way to describe it.
Well, it certainly was not. It was not
Joe Cocker like that, but that's the closest kind of vibe I could. So the music was open, and when you're playing with Lenny White, you're playing with a jazz of extremely high level, intelligent, sophisticated jazz musician. So if he's not going to try to blow you away, or you're not going to dare try to intimidate him with a bunch of chops and stuff. This is all really so when I play with him, we get the rhythm thing on to where it really feels good to be sinking in down through the earth, and rocking hard. but also, I treat him not like another drummer, like a saxophone player, like it's just another instrument. So why gorilla the thing just because it's a set of drums? Why not listen to him the same way I listen to Eddie Henderson? You know what I mean? And he's going to do that by. That's just his nature. He hears the whole picture. So he hears music as the whole thing. He doesn't hear the drum part or this or, guys will talk about the bass line or this. He hears the whole thing. So we don't have to have those discussions. And, just on a natural, when it's time to really, to feel the groove and to really get the rhythm thing going on, and it happens on its own without discussion. And when it's time for us to do a lot of playing, it's interlocked, so nobody's just going off. You know what I mean? And that's my experience anyway. And everybody's different. I've never.
No, I did. You listen. I want to riff on this for a minute because Rick Murata. I want to read this quote to you, and then because you just talked about that kind of bitches brew style music, and this was an invigorating story. And then I just want you to riff on it. He said. He was in a band called Brethren, so he had all access to all the clubs. And, he said the jazz part of things was very intimidating to me at the time. I would see Miles, the Bitches Brew band, which was unbelievable. It was crazy. It was funk. Chick Corea and Keith Jarrett were both playing piano. Mike Moore and Harvey Brooks were both playing bass. Airto was playing percussion. Jack DeJohnette was on drums. It was like watching guys throwing things at each other on stage. It was interesting watching Miles at that time because I used to describe it as watching the Pied Piper. Miles would come out and things would simmer down. Miles would play something and they'd all start playing. Things would simmer down and you could hear things would start to percolate. Miles would slowly walk out on stage and he would blow a few notes somewhere. All of a sudden, the rest of the band would scamper like rats to whatever he played. They'd all start playing around whatever riff he played, and then he'd stop and step away, and they'd go nuts. They'd go back to going nuts again, back and forth at each other. That's what I thought jazz was. What I'm describing is exactly what I heard. When you've got Keith Jarrett and Chick Corea, two bass players, maybe a sax, and Airto, Jack DeJohnette, all running, you don't know whether they're going in the same direction or different directions. I mean, can you just riff on the idea of how you were able to, because for Rick, he thought that's what jazz was, but it turns out that really wasn't his palette. How did you make sense of all that and ultimately fit into a context like that?
You mean when I played with Lenny or when I was listening to Miles with that band you're talking about?
I guess both. I mean, the idea that in '69, I mean, when you were hearing the Bitches Brew band, I have to believe that there was some amalgamation of stuff that you were trying to do something similar to. And
now the way I heard it was I knew where things were. I had an idea of where things were going based on what happened before. That's the best way I can put it. Also, what they were playing and the way they were playing at it came, for most of those guys, from the jazz tradition. So it wasn't like I didn't know what they were doing.
Right.
And to me, it just sounded like the next wave of where it was going. It's like when I did what I did. I'm only bringing it back around to me because I'm the guy I know the best.
Oh, absolutely.
So when I did the stuff I did on Actual Proof, okay, I had listened to Clyde, Jabbo, on the funk side now we're talking, and Purdy. I had seen and been following, and Roy McCurdy, and I had been following those guys. So I kind of knew where I was watching them develop. I was hearing them develop as the years went by, a couple of years in there, not 10, but 3 or 4. I was seeing they were coming up with stuff. And so it was sort of easy to see what was coming next. It didn't take, you didn't have to be like Kreskin to see what was coming next. It was going to be an extension of this thing that went down. That's what I heard when I heard Miles' band with Jack and those guys.
Yeah, and just to be clear, I mean,
I'm not saying it didn't surprise me or I didn't love it.
No. I mean, the thing is, Murata truly didn't pick up the drum kit until he was 19 years old. So that's what I mean. He was literally immersed in that stuff while you had a drum kit when you were 3 or 4 years old in Texas. So it's
well,
like,
his estimation in his words of what he heard though sounded pretty damn accurate to me.
Absolutely. I mean,
I mean, like wherever you're coming, he heard it. That's for sure. Like I just say it different.
We have hours and hours of more to do, but I do want to spend a minute. I put out one of my quick questions this morning, and I just wanted you to talk about. You were there playing at these rallies in a different time in our society, the civil rights rallies, the Black Panther rallies in Oakland. You saw the brutality firsthand. It wasn't like we're not voracious readers. We like to be on the ground in the moment. You saw the injustice. My question for you is this, Mike. Why today is it only a woman's march on Washington? Shouldn't it be a call to action to all people, all minorities, all fathers with daughters, all people that are in sanctuary cities, all mayors of sanctuary cities, all types of people? Why is it just a women's march?
I don't know, but I have no idea.
Good answer.
Yeah, I just don't. But women have a lot of rights, civil rights that they've been dealing with forever, and now those are threatened by what's going on. So they're standing up. But there's a lot of men there too, and I'm sure that the further this goes, there'll be a lot of protest rallies and marches. But the fact that there's 900,000 plus, but that was a report from about an hour ago. Now there's probably more. I mean, any form of oppression is horrific, and so I feel that we have to stand up to. I'm proud of the people that are there today doing this and it's going down here in New York too. There's going to be a march this afternoon.
Yeah, there's one in Tucson. There's one in Tucson. So you're saying there's almost 1 million people in D.C. alone?
Well, that's what I just read right before we started. So
yeah.
I mean, I don't know whether it's true or not. I'm not there, but I have a feeling it's probably true. So
here's the thing. Here's another. This is important, okay? Because this is what we live in, a society that has allowed peaceful demonstration. But what is your advice, even though it's unprecedented? We're going to have somebody in power now who basically is ignoring the fact that more people didn't vote for him. He doesn't have a mandate and he doesn't care. How do you fight back against something like that?
Well, that's what we're going to have to find out how to do. I have no idea other than they're trying to do it now by this march to voice their opinions and how they feel about things. The people. We're going to have to really dig down deep to find out how to continue to move forward and not backward. Greed, anger, and stupidity, or avarice, are at the bottom of any kind of oppression. And somehow we found ourselves in the position of 1% owning all of the money, all of the power, all of the wealth. And we really do have the power. We're unable to unify. Therefore, we're not fighting back with the kind of result we want to see. If we shut down everything, okay, I'm not flying on any planes, I'm not buying any gasoline, I'm not buying any groceries, I'm not buying a goddamn thing, I'm not leaving my pad, I'm not going to work, I'm going to do this. Do what you got to do. You got to arrest me. Then we could come to the table because money is their god, and
right.
So, but as long as we're down here, they have this dance has been going on since slavery of everybody fighting with each other. They're up there having a party on our dime. You know what I mean?
No, I mean it's you know it's to me it's he doesn't mean a word he says. He's bloodthirsty and hell-bent on vengeance. I have 2 young daughters. I don't want to wind up in a nuclear holocaust. And I see the people that showed up to support him. And they're human beings, and I treat every human being the same way. I don't care if they're the janitor or, Donald Trump. It's just, it seems to me that we are dealing with a lack of understanding about it's a perfect storm, and I'm looking forward to getting back in touch with you down the road in maybe 6-8 months and seeing where we're at, because short of a silver bullet like for him to be impeached, he's gonna have to be hand checked at all areas, and it's gonna be fascinating, but it's also a little bit terrifying as well.
Yeah, well, when facts don't mean anything,
right?
When lies are, when a person blatantly lies, and everybody has a video clip of him doing what he says he doesn't do, and he doesn't care. It's just like, hey, he even said, hey, I could kill somebody and they wouldn't say a word to me about it. I'd still be, they'd still vote for me or whatever.
Right.
I think he's right about that. I mean, it's like,
he's become a messiah, the messiah kind of thing. It's just, it's very. Anyway, Mike, I had a ball with you, man.
Thank you, bro.
All right, and just keep cooking along, and we'll pick things back up. I mean, the fight's just beginning, if you can believe it or not. I know you've been in it for years, decades, but just realize it's just beginning now. So that's invigorating. Yeah.
Well, listen, Jake. Great questions. Top drawer all the way, top shelf all the way, man. And I enjoyed that very much. You got me thinking about things now.
Yeah, my point is to get you fired up and go out and do your thing, man. Keep cooking, man. Much love to you, brother.
You too, brother.
All right, later. Bye-bye. Just heard from Mike Clark, great human being, amazing drummer, and someone who's hell-bent on making sure that, nobody's civil rights are completely infringed upon. We'll be back in just a little bit with Steve Grossman on The Jake Feinberg Show.